the science of working less and achieving more. What if I told you that everything you think you know about productivity is completely wrong? The research is clear. Working longer hours, multitasking, and grinding yourself into burnout isn't just unhealthy. It's actually making you worse at your job. Stay with me for the next few minutes, and I'll show you how the most successful people are working fewer hours while getting more done. Like the CEO who transformed her company by cutting workdays to just 6 hours, or the programmer who tripled his output by changing when he works. These aren't lazy shortcuts. They're science-backed strategies that will transform how you think about work. The burnout epidemic. Have you ever worked so hard you actually got worse at your job? Like you're pushing through those late nights, chugging coffee, powering through weekend work sessions, only to find yourself making stupid mistakes, forgetting important details, and feeling like your brain is wrapped in fog? Yeah, you're not alone. I've been there too, and it turns out there's actual science behind why this happens. What we're talking about is burnout, and it's basically become an epidemic. Seriously, burnout has gotten so bad that in 2019, the World Health Organization officially recognized it as an occupational phenomenon in their International Classification of Diseases. That's pretty major. They defined it as a syndrome resulting from chronic workplace stress that hasn't been successfully managed. And according to a recent Gallup study, 76% of employees experience burnout at least sometimes, with 28% saying they're burned out very often or always. Think about that. In your average office, 3 out of 4 people around you are experiencing some level of burnout, and nearly a third are basically living in burnout all the time. This indicates a systemic problem affecting workplaces everywhere. So what does burnout actually look like in real life? It goes beyond feeling tired or having a bad day. It's when your brain literally stops functioning the way it should. You read the same email 4 times and still can't process what it's saying. You stare at your screen, knowing you need to start a project, but your brain refuses to engage. Someone asks you a simple question in a meeting, and your mind goes completely blank. I remember a friend who's a graphic designer telling me how she once spent 3 hours on a simple logo revision that should have taken 20 minutes. She couldn't get her creative brain to work. Another friend who's an accountant started making calculation errors that even a beginner wouldn't make. These aren't signs of incompetence. They're symptoms of a brain in burnout. Burnout affects more than just your emotional state. It actually damages your cognitive function. Research from the Karolinska Institute found that chronic stress associated with burnout causes measurable changes in the brain's structure, particularly in areas responsible for memory, attention, and executive function. Your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that handles complex thinking, decision-making, and emotional regulation, literally starts shutting down. I learned this the hard way. A couple years ago, I was working on launching a new channel while holding down my day job. I was sleeping maybe 5 hours a night, working through weekends, and living on energy drinks and takeout. I thought I was being productive and dedicated. Then one day, I found myself sitting in my car in the parking lot crying because I couldn't remember if I was supposed to be arriving at work or leaving to go home. My brain had stopped processing basic information. I started making ridiculous mistakes, the kind that made me question if I even knew how to do my job anymore. This personal wake-up call led me to research what was happening, and what I discovered is that burnout is an actual physiological response. When you're chronically stressed, your body produces excessive cortisol, your primary stress hormone. In short bursts, cortisol is helpful. It gives you that boost of energy and focus when you need it. But when cortisol stays elevated for too long, it starts damaging your body and brain. A study from the University of California found that chronic stress shrinks the hippocampus, which is essential for memory formation. It also enlarges your amygdala, making you more reactive to stress and threats. At the same time, the neural connections in your prefrontal cortex start to weaken, making it harder to concentrate, solve problems, and regulate your emotions. This explains why you can't think straight when you're burned out. Your brain is literally being remodeled by stress, and not in a good way. Research from Stanford University found that when you work more than 50 hours per week, your productivity starts dropping dramatically. And beyond 55 hours, you're basically just spinning your wheels. You might be physically present for 70 hours a week, but your actual output would probably be higher if you just worked 40 hours and then went home. Our culture glorifies the grind and celebrates people who are always on. However, this approach actually makes us worse at our jobs, not better. It's like trying to drive a car that's running on fumes. You might keep moving forward for a while, but eventually you're going to break down completely. But here's the good news. There's a better way to work, and it's backed by science. There are evidence-based approaches that can help you achieve more while working less. And I'm not talking about productivity hacks or time management tricks. I'm talking about fundamental changes in how we approach work. Is working more hours actually making you less productive? The research is clear on this. Studies show that after 40 hours of work in a week, productivity actually drops by 50% for each additional hour. That means your 50th hour of work in a week is only producing half the results of your earlier hours. And it just gets worse from there. You're actively damaging your brain's ability to function well. But before we can fix this problem, we need to understand the myths that got us here in the first place. There are some deeply ingrained beliefs about productivity and success that are actually hurting us, and they're not based in reality. Myth number 1, more hours equals more success. The first myth we need to bust is one you've probably heard your whole life. Put in the hours and you'll get the rewards. We wear our 60-hour work weeks like badges of honor, but here's something wild. After 8 hours of mental work, your decision-making ability actually drops by 70%. Yep, those extra hours you're so proud of, they might be making you worse at your job. Think about the last time you stayed super late at work. Maybe you were trying to finish a project or impress your boss. But when you look back, was the work you did in hour 9, 10, or 11 actually any good? I'm guessing probably not. And there's a reason for that. This idea that longer hours equals better results is literally programmed into our culture. We glorify the hustle, celebrate the grind, and somehow equate exhaustion with dedication. We've all seen those LinkedIn posts. While you were sleeping, I was working. Like that's something to be proud of? But what does the research really say about this myth? When we look at the data, the truth becomes clear. The 40-hour work week was actually designed for factory workers, not for people doing complex cognitive tasks. Henry Ford adopted this schedule back in 1926 because his research showed that working longer hours actually decreased productivity. When workers pushed beyond 40 hours, they started making mistakes, having accidents, and the quality of work plummeted. Today, countries with the shortest work weeks demonstrate the highest productivity. Norway, Denmark, and Germany average around 27 hours of work per week, yet their productivity per hour surpasses countries with longer hours. Germany's productivity is 70% higher per hour than Greece, where they work almost 40% more hours. The evidence consistently shows that working longer doesn't translate to producing more. The impact on your brain when you push past your limits is significant. Scientists at Harvard Medical School found that mental fatigue accumulates throughout the day, making each additional hour progressively less effective. After 8 hours of cognitive work, your creative thinking ability drops by about 60%. Your attention narrows, errors increase, and your professional skills deteriorate. Think of your brain like a car with a fuel gauge. Your mental energy is the fuel, and complex thinking tasks rapidly deplete your tank. After several hours of focused work, you're running on empty. Your prefrontal cortex, responsible for planning, decision-making, and impulse control, begins to shut down. This is why you find yourself making simple mistakes or staring blankly at your screen after a long day. History's greatest minds understood these limitations. Charles Darwin worked about 3 hours a day, from 8 a.m. to 9:30 a.m., 10:30 a.m. to noon, and 4:30 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. The remainder of his time was devoted to walking, reading, or resting. Einstein maintained a regular schedule of 5 to 6 hours daily for his most challenging problems, emphasizing the importance of daydreaming. Ernest Hemingway wrote for just 5 to 6 hours each morning. These brilliant individuals recognized that creative work depends on quality, not quantity, working intensely during peak hours rather than endlessly grinding. The consequences of ignoring these cognitive limits are severe. Research from the Finnish Institute of Occupational Health found that regularly working more than 11 hours daily doubles your risk of major depression. A study from University College London revealed that working beyond 55 hours weekly increases stroke risk by 33%. We're harming ourselves to accomplish more, yet ironically, achieving less. The specific effects on your brain during extended work hours are dramatic. After 8 hours of mental work, prefrontal cortex activity significantly decreases. According to New York University research, your problem-solving abilities for creative challenges decrease by around 60%, and your ability to focus on important details falls by 45%. For every extra hour beyond 8, you're operating with a fraction of your mental capacity. Real-world experiments confirm these findings. Microsoft Japan implemented a 4-day work week and saw productivity increase by 40%. Electricity costs dropped by 23% and printing decreased by 59%. Employees accomplished more in less time by prioritizing effectively, reducing unnecessary meetings, and working more efficiently during their limited hours. Alex Sujin Kim Pang's book, Rest: Why You Get More Done When You Work Less, offers another compelling perspective. He found that elite violinists who became world-class performers practiced no more than 4 hours daily, while those practicing longer hours, but with less intensity, never reached the same excellence. The best performers weren't practicing more, they were practicing better, with complete concentration, followed by full recovery. You might think, but my boss expects me to work long hours. The reality is that most employers care about results, not hours. If you deliver better work in less time by working smarter, that's what ultimately matters. If your workplace truly values hours over output, consider whether that environment supports your success or leads to burnout. The real insight isn't about reducing work hours arbitrarily. It's about understanding the relationship between time, energy, and output. It's recognizing your brain's natural limits and respecting those boundaries to become more effective. It's about maximizing the quality of your work hours rather than simply increasing their quantity. The pressure to be always on. While our brains have natural limits, our technology doesn't. Your laptop never gets tired, your phone never needs a break, and that notification light keeps blinking 24/7. When was the last time you actually disconnected completely? And what's happening to your stress hormones when you never truly log off? I mean, think about what happens on a typical Sunday evening. You're trying to relax, maybe watching a show or having dinner with family, but your mind keeps drifting to tomorrow's deadlines. That little voice in your head whispers, you could be getting ahead on those emails right now. So you sneak a peek at your phone just to check. Before you know it, you're halfway through your inbox, your relaxation completely sabotaged. This feeling isn't random. It's actually engineered into our modern work culture. See, for most of human history, work had natural stopping points. When the sun went down, farmers stopped farming. When winter came, certain types of work paused entirely. Even during the Industrial Revolution, most workers clocked out and physically left the factory behind. Compare that to today. The average person checks their work email 74 times a day and touches their phone nearly 2,600 times daily, according to research from the University of California. We're constantly tethered to work through these devices we carry everywhere. The physical boundaries between workspace and home space have completely collapsed, and remote work has intensified this problem. A Stanford study showed that during the pandemic, remote workers' workdays extended by an average of 48.5 minutes. When your home becomes your office never closes. Gone is the commute that once served as a psychological buffer between work and home life. Technology enables this constant connection, but our culture reinforces it. We've developed what sociologists call a hustle culture, a collective obsession with constant productivity. Just look at how we talk about rest now. We take productive vacations where we catch up on reading business books or develop side hustles. Ever notice how people humble brag about how busy they are? "I'm just so slammed right now" has become a status symbol. A Cornell University study found that 86% of Americans associate busyness with higher social status and importance. Being constantly busy now signals your value to others. Social media has turbocharged this effect. We're bombarded with carefully curated highlights of other people's productivity. That guy from college posting about his 5 a.m. workout, meditation session, and completing 3 major work projects before breakfast? He's not showing the 2 hours he spent in a brain fog staring at his computer screen later that afternoon. Seeing these highlight reels makes us feel perpetually behind. The science on what this always-on pressure does to us is alarming. Researchers at the University of Copenhagen found that knowing you might work communications outside of work hours raises cortisol levels by 37%. Your body enters a stress response from the mere possibility of a work email. Sleep quality deteriorates too. A 2021 study in the Journal of Occupational Health Psychology found that people who checked work emails before bed took 52% longer to fall asleep and experienced 53% more sleep disturbances throughout the night than those who disconnected. What's fascinating is how different this looks in other cultures. The Netherlands consistently ranks among the highest in work-life balance globally, with only 0.5% of Dutch employees regularly working very long hours, compared to the OECD average of 11%. The Dutch embrace niksen, which literally translates to doing nothing, considering it essential to well-being, not laziness. The Japanese concept of ma emphasizes the appreciation of negative space and pauses. In traditional Japanese work culture, weren't seen as wasted time, but as necessary space between productive periods. Similarly, most Finnish workers take a full month of vacation every summer, completely disconnected from work emails. Why have Americans become so trapped in this always-on mindset? Harvard Business School psychologists found something revealing. Participants who felt insecure about their professional worth were 31% more likely to stay connected to work during off hours. We're trying to prove our value through constant availability. Then there's FOMO, fear of missing out. A Microsoft Workplace study found that 56% of people check email outside of work hours because they're afraid of missing something important. Ironically, this checking creates more anxiety than it relieves. The most counterintuitive finding? All this constant connectivity actually decreases productivity. A 2020 UC Irvine study found that people who constantly check email are 20% less effective at their core job tasks than those who batch process emails a few times a day. Being always on makes us worse at our jobs, not better. That same research discovered that the mere expectation of availability increases stress regardless of message volume. Just knowing your boss might email you at 9 p.m. keeps your nervous system activated. This creates what researchers call anticipatory stress, being stressed about work even when nothing stressful is happening, just waiting for something to demand your attention. The numbers paint a stark picture. 78% of professionals check work email outside office hours, with 62% checking messages before they even get out of bed, and 40% check work communications within 10 minutes of going to bed at night. Our devices have effectively extended the workday into every waking moment, and many moments when we should be sleeping. Myth number 2, multitasking makes you more efficient. That perpetual edge of anticipation doesn't just follow us after hours, it becomes how we work all day long. Think you're being super productive when you bounce between your inbox, Slack notifications, and that report due tomorrow? Turns out your brain is playing a cruel trick on you, and the science shows we're paying a much steeper price than we realize. Are you one of the 90% who believes they're an exceptional multitasker? I used to brag about answering emails while on conference calls, while also somehow planning my weekly schedule. It felt productive, efficient, even a little impressive. Mathematically impossible for most of us to be above average, yet we all seem to think we're the exception. Here's the reality. Multitasking is literally a myth. It doesn't exist. What we're actually doing is task switching, and our brains are terrible at it. When researchers at Stanford University put self-proclaimed heavy multitaskers through cognitive tests, they discovered something shocking. These people performed worse on every single measure of cognitive function, including actual task-switching ability. In your brain, the process resembles a split-second juggling act. When attempting multiple cognitive tasks simultaneously, your prefrontal cortex, the brain's command center, divides its limited resources. Brain imaging studies from MIT reveal this clearly. Neural networks compete for resources, creating what researchers call response selection bottlenecks. Professor Earl Miller, a neuroscientist at MIT, explains, "People can't multitask very well, and when they say they can, they're deluding themselves." Your brain rapidly switches between tasks, and that switching exacts a hefty toll. This toll, called switching cost, exceeds what most imagine. A University of California study found that after each task switch, your brain needs an average of 23 minutes and 15 seconds to fully regain focus. Think about that. Check your phone during a project for 30 seconds, and you've potentially lost almost half an hour of productivity. The cognitive impact runs deeper. University of London researchers found that task switching can temporarily lower your effective IQ by 15 points, equivalent to missing an entire night's sleep or smoking marijuana. That report you're writing while monitoring email? It's simply not your best work. The quality deterioration is substantial. A Journal of Experimental Psychology study found that task switching increased error rates by 50%. Another study showed medical professionals who interrupted tasks were likely to make twice as many mistakes. When surgeons are actively discouraged from task switching in operating rooms, it signals a serious issue. This fragmented attention damages memory formation too. When your attention splits, your hippocampus can't properly encode experiences into long-term storage. UCLA researchers discovered that people regularly processing multiple information streams had significantly worse recall compared to single taskers. Most technology is deliberately designed to fragment our attention. Former Google design ethicist Tristan Harris has exposed how apps and websites are engineered to capture your focus. Notifications trigger dopamine releases in your brain, the same neurotransmitter involved in addiction, making you crave the next interruption. Research from D-Scout reveals the average smartphone user touches their device 2,617 times daily. Internal documents from Facebook confirmed they specifically designed notification systems to maximize time on device, prioritizing engagement over your productivity or well-being. We've created a paradox where multitasking is praised on resumes while science shows it makes us worse at everything we do. The cost extends beyond productivity to physical health. UC Irvine researchers found workers who task switch throughout the day have significantly higher heart rates and cortisol levels compared to single taskers. That constant switching keeps your stress response activated all day. Even those confident in their juggling abilities are fooling themselves. A Harvard study monitored brain activity during various cognitive tasks and found participants who rated themselves as excellent multitaskers showed the most dramatic performance drops when attempting multiple tasks. The more confident they were, the worse they performed. The illusion affects our perception of others too. Study participants who watched someone typing while on a phone call rated that person as 30% more productive, despite objective measures showing slower completion times and more errors than single taskers. This presents a significant opportunity. If the average worker loses 2 to 3 hours daily to task switching, imagine what you could accomplish by reclaiming that time. Cal Newport, author of Deep Work, suggests focused concentration is becoming increasingly rare and valuable, creating a competitive advantage for those who master it. The solution isn't working longer hours, it's protecting your attention. One study found people who batch processed emails just 3 times daily experience significantly lower stress and higher productivity. A University of Illinois study showed blocking social media during focus periods resulted in a 37% increase in project completion rates. Companies are implementing these insights too. Firms like Basecamp and Buffer have created Focus Fridays, where meetings are banned and employees work on single tasks without interruption. The results have been impressive. Myth number 3. Your productivity equals your worth. Beyond all these workplace tweaks and productivity hacks lies something way more personal, that sinking feeling when you've had an unproductive day. You know what I'm talking about, right? That voice saying you're falling behind, not doing enough, maybe even that you're somehow failing as a person. Turns out this mental link between what you produce and what you're worth is making you miserable. Science shows it's actually making you worse at everything you do. This is probably the most dangerous productivity myth of all. The idea that your value as a human being is somehow tied to how much you get done. I see this all the time in my community. People apologizing for being lazy when they took a weekend off, or feeling guilty about napping even when they're exhausted. It's like we've collectively decided that being productive is the same as being worthy. This mindset has deep historical roots in the Protestant work ethic from the 16th century and intensified during the Industrial Revolution, when human value became directly tied to factory output. But we're humans doing complex creative work that requires our brains to function at their best. The psychological impact is devastating. A 2022 study from the University of Pennsylvania found that people who strongly tied their self-worth to their productivity were 73% more likely to experience burnout within 6 months. Let that sink in. The very mindset supposedly helping us achieve more is actively destroying our ability to work effectively. I talked with Jamie, a graphic designer whose story really stuck with me. She used to judge her entire day as a waste if she didn't check off enough items on her to-do list. I'd literally feel worthless, she told me, her voice catching. Like I didn't deserve to relax or enjoy anything until I'd earned it through productivity. This intense pressure led to a complete creative block that lasted for months. She couldn't design anything because the stakes felt impossibly high with every blank canvas. For Jamie, everything changed when she started tracking how her creative work actually happened. She discovered that her best ideas consistently emerged after periods of rest or play, never during those grueling 12-hour workdays when she was trying to prove her worth through output. This personal discovery mirrors what researchers at Harvard have documented extensively. Our brains need unfocused time to make the connections that lead to innovation. The University of Gothenburg found something similar when tracking creative professionals. Those who practiced self-compassion when facing setbacks were 34% more likely to successfully complete challenging projects than those who criticized themselves. Even more striking, their work was rated significantly more creative by independent evaluators. This isn't just about feeling better, it's about performance. Psychology professor Kristen Neff found that people who approach challenges with self-kindness show greater persistence after failure and higher motivation than those driven by self-criticism. Treating yourself as a valued human being, not just a productivity machine, actually leads to better work. Yet so many of us fall into this trap. A 2021 survey revealed that 62% of Americans feel guilty when taking time off work, even using earned vacation days. We've become so attached to constant productivity that we've forgotten how essential rest is to accomplishment. This distorted perception has a name: productivity dysmorphia, coined by organizational psychologist Devin Price to describe the inability to accurately see your own accomplishments. We could complete 10 important tasks, but fixate exclusively on the one thing left undone. I experienced this myself last year during a major project. No matter how much I accomplished, I kept moving the goalposts. I'd work late nights, push through weekends, and still feel like a failure. My partner finally called me out when I described a day where I'd completed 3 major deliverables as basically getting nothing done. The look of concern on her face made me realize how warped my perception had become. The toll of this mindset is enormous. Researchers at Michigan State University found that people who connect their self-worth to productivity showed elevated cortisol levels throughout the day, even during rest periods. Their bodies remained in a constant state of stress. They are perpetually awaiting the next productivity evaluation. There's something profoundly sad about reducing our human experience to output metrics. As British philosopher Alan Watts asked, "What would you do if money was no object?" The question reveals how we've confused the means, productivity, with the end, a meaningful life. The alternative isn't abandoning accomplishment, it's developing a healthier relationship with productivity. Psychologists at the University of Texas found that people who frame work as a choice rather than an obligation report both higher job satisfaction and better performance reviews. The key difference is autonomy, seeing work as something they choose rather than something defining their worth. Jessica, a software developer I interviewed, described her shift. "I used to introduce myself by my job title and hours worked. Now I define myself by my values, relationships, and qualities I bring to everything I do." Her mental health improved dramatically, and, interestingly, so did her work performance. When she stopped obsessively measuring her worth by productivity metrics, she actually became more productive. This doesn't mean abandoning goals or ambition. It means recognizing that your value isn't determined by your output on any given day. As Dr. Alex Soojung Kim Pang puts it, rest is not the opposite of work. It's an essential part of it. The alternative to this toxic cycle, developing what positive psychologists call unconditional self-worth, the belief that you have inherent value regardless of external achievements. Studies show people with this mindset are not only happier, but more resilient when facing inevitable setbacks. Working with your body's natural rhythms. While cultivating unconditional self-worth is essential, there's another vital piece of the productivity puzzle hiding in plain sight. Your body actually operates on natural energy cycles that most traditional work schedules completely ignore. Have you ever noticed that sometimes you're laser-focused for an hour, then suddenly your brain feels foggy? That's not random. It's your body trying to tell you something important about when you should work and when you should rest. These natural cycles are called ultradian rhythms. Think of them like waves of energy that flow through your day. Unlike circadian rhythms that regulate our sleep-wake cycle over 24 hours, ultradian rhythms operate throughout the day in shorter cycles of about 90 to 120 minutes. During each cycle, your body and brain naturally flow between periods of high energy and focus, followed by periods where your body signals it needs recovery. Consider a typical morning. You start work at 9 a.m., feeling sharp and focused. By 10:30, you might notice your concentration slipping, your mind wandering, or a sudden craving for coffee. This isn't a failure of willpower, it's your ultradian rhythm signaling a natural transition from high energy to recovery mode. Most of us have been trained to ignore these signals our entire working lives. Traditional work schedules assume we can maintain the same level of focus and energy from 9 to 5, which contradicts how our brains and bodies actually function. The science behind these energy cycles reveals something important. Researchers at Florida State University found that elite performers across different fields work in focused bursts of 90 to 120 minutes, followed by significant breaks. When we work with these natural cycles instead of against them, we tap into our body's capacity for both intense focus and necessary recovery. During the high-energy phase of your ultradian rhythm, your brain is primed for complex problem-solving and creative thinking. Your body temperature rises slightly and heart rate increases. You can process information more quickly. During the natural dip phase, your body releases signals that it's time for a break. Concentration becomes more difficult. Pushing through actually reduces productivity. Researchers at Desk Time analyzed productivity patterns and found that high performers worked intensely for about 52 minutes, then took breaks for about 17 minutes. The key insight? They worked in sync with their body's natural rhythms. To identify your own energy patterns, track your focus and mood throughout the day for about a week. When do you naturally feel most alert? When does your focus start to wane? Most people experience their highest mental clarity in the morning, a dip after lunch, and sometimes another focus period in late afternoon. Once you've identified your patterns, structure your day around these rhythms. 1. Schedule demanding tasks during peak energy periods, typically mornings for most people. 2. Save routine, less mentally taxing work for natural dip periods. 3. Build strategic, intentional breaks into your schedule. 4. Use breaks for complete mental shifts, walking, stretching, or stepping outside. These aren't random breaks to check social media. University of Illinois researchers found that brief diversions from a task dramatically improved focus for prolonged periods. A NASA study even found that a 26-minute nap improved pilot performance by 34% and alertness by 54%. Tony Schwartz, founder of the Energy Project, explains it this way. The importance of restoration is rooted in our physiology. Human beings aren't designed to expend energy continuously. Rather, we're meant to pulse between spending and recovering energy. A practical approach is working in 90-minute blocks followed by 20-minute breaks. During your focus period, eliminate distractions and work on a single important task. When time is up, take a real break. Step away from your desk completely. Sarah, a graphic designer, restructured her workday around these principles with impressive results. She now works in focused 90-minute sessions with intentional breaks, scheduling creative work during her morning peak, meetings midday, and routine tasks in the afternoon. I'm getting more done in less time, she reports. And I don't feel completely drained at the end of the day anymore. The Draugium Group found that employees who took regular breaks were 16% more effective at creative problem solving and reported 40% less mental fatigue at the end of the day. This approach is powerful because it focuses on working the right hours in the right way. By aligning your work schedule with your body's natural rhythm, you can accomplish more while working less. Imagine ending your workday feeling energized instead of exhausted. The challenge is that our work culture often values time on task over actual results. The key is to focus on outcomes rather than hours. When you demonstrate producing better work more consistently by working with your natural rhythms, it becomes easier to justify this approach. K. Anders Ericsson, whose research inspired the 10,000 hours concept, found that elite performers weren't just practicing more. They were practicing better by working intensely for limited periods and then resting. Forward-thinking companies like Buffer now encourage employees to work in cycles that respect their natural rhythms. Finding this approach improves productivity, reduces burnout, and increases satisfaction. The power of deep work. Even with companies like Buffer embracing natural work rhythms, there's a massive disconnect between hours spent at work and actual productivity. The average knowledge worker is physically at their desk for 8 hours but fully engaged for less than 3 of them. So what's happening during those other 5+ hours? We're caught in a productivity twilight zone, not really focused, not really resting. This reality makes perfect sense when examining today's work environment. We face constant bombardment from notifications, meetings, and quick tasks that fragment our attention. A UC Irvine study found office workers are interrupted every 3 minutes and 5 seconds. More troubling, these interruptions require an average of 23 minutes to recover and resume productive workflow. The math explains why we accomplish only a few hours of meaningful work daily. Our workdays lack what Cal Newport calls deep work, the ability to focus without distraction on cognitively demanding tasks. This skill grows increasingly rare, precisely when it becomes most valuable in our economy. As routine tasks become automated, deep thinking, complex problem-solving, and innovative creation distinguish human contribution from machine output. Research from Georgetown University demonstrates that knowledge workers who cultivate deep work produce results of dramatically higher quality and quantity. A study tracking top-performing programmers revealed they weren't working more hours. They worked differently. These top performers generated 10x more output by working in distraction-free environments that allowed extended concentration periods. The science behind this transformation is compelling. During uninterrupted focus, your brain physically changes. Neuroscientists at Columbia University discovered that sustained concentration creates network synchrony. Stronger neural connections form in areas responsible for problem-solving and creativity. This state only emerges after about 15 to 20 minutes of continuous focus. Most people never reach it because they check phones or email too frequently, constantly resetting the clock on potential synchrony. Implementing deep work in our distracted world requires creating environments that protect focus. First, identify your high-value work, creative, analytical, or strategic tasks that genuinely advance your goals. Then build systems that safeguard your ability to concentrate on them. Simple approaches work. Blocking focus time on your calendar and disabling notifications significantly helps. Microsoft research found people who scheduled focus time were 43% more likely to engage in deep work. Physical environment matters too. Harvard Business School research shows open offices reduce productivity by up to 15%. If you work in such spaces, noise-canceling headphones become essential productivity tools. Studies show workers in noisy environments make 40% fewer attempts at solving difficult problems compared to those in quiet settings. Creating the right environment is only half the solution. You must also train your concentration ability, your deep work muscle. In our notification-saturated world, many have severely weakened this capacity. Rebuild it through deliberate practice. Begin with 30 minutes of completely focused work, then gradually increase duration. The Pomodoro technique, 25-minute focused intervals separated by short breaks, proves particularly effective. Applied psychology research found this method increased productivity 37% compared to maintaining focus for longer unbroken periods. Results appear quickly. Stanford researchers found people practicing deep work for just 2 weeks showed measurable improvements in focus and distraction resistance. After 4 weeks, participants reported 28% less mental fatigue despite accomplishing more. The quality improvements are equally significant. Microsoft research tracked software developers and discovered those engaging in deep work wrote more code with approximately 40% fewer bugs than colleagues working in fragmented patterns. The deep workers weren't necessarily more talented. They created conditions allowing full expression of their capabilities. Consider the transformation of a software engineer I know. She struggled with complex algorithm development while constantly responding to Slack messages and attending frequent meetings. After restructuring her schedule to include 3 90-minute deep work blocks weekly, she solved a critical performance issue that had stalled her team for months. The solution came during her second week of deep work practice. during a period of uninterrupted focus when network synchrony could develop fully. Other effective strategies include batch processing similar tasks. Every context switch, from writing to email to social media to meetings, incurs what psychologists call a switching cost. Loughborough University found workers who checked emails just 3 times daily versus continuously reduced stress by 33% while completing the same workload. Deep work requires eliminating non-essential activities. Warren Buffett noted that successful people say no to almost everything. This applies to external requests and internal impulses to check social media when challenging work feels difficult. The rewards extend beyond productivity. Regular deep focus correlates with higher work satisfaction and meaning. Psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi's research on flow states, periods of complete absorption in challenging work, shows strong correlation with overall happiness and well-being. Perhaps most compelling is McKinsey's decade-long study finding top executives who created regular uninterrupted time blocks were 500% more productive during those periods. They made their most important strategic decisions during these deep work sessions, not during meetings or collaborative time. By structuring your work to prioritize periods of intense focus, establishing boundaries against interruptions, and gradually building your concentration capacity, you can transform not just your productivity, but your relationship with work itself. Deep work doesn't merely increase output, it creates the conditions for your best thinking to emerge. Purpose-driven productivity. That writer's success wasn't just about finding the right time. It was about connecting to something meaningful. What if I told you that the most productive people aren't the ones with the best time management systems or the strongest willpower, but those who figured out how to link every task to something they deeply care about? I remember watching a hospital custodian transform what many would consider a mundane job into something profound. When asked about her role, she didn't describe cleaning rooms. She said, "I'm part of the healing team. By keeping rooms sterile, I help patients avoid infections and recover faster." Same job, completely different mindset, and her performance consistently ranked in the top 10% of the cleaning staff. Ever wondered why passion projects seem effortless while assigned tasks feel like trudging through mud? Think about the last time you were so absorbed in a project that you completely lost track of time. Maybe you were designing something, solving a problem that really mattered to you, or working on something you loved. That feeling where hours pass like minutes is your brain operating in an entirely different mode. This is what psychologists call intrinsic motivation, and it functions as rocket fuel for productivity, igniting your focus, accelerating your problem solving, and propelling you past obstacles that would normally stop you cold. When you're working on something because you genuinely care about it, not for external rewards like money or approval, your brain processes the experience completely differently. A study from the University of Rochester found that people working on intrinsically motivated tasks showed 32% higher persistence when facing obstacles and reported significantly higher satisfaction with their work. Your brain literally processes purpose-driven work as a reward in itself. Consider the programmer I interviewed who constantly burned out at his corporate job. The work wasn't particularly difficult. He simply couldn't bring himself to care about optimizing ad delivery algorithms. He took a 30% pay cut to work for a nonprofit developing assistive technology for people with disabilities. "I'm working longer hours now, but I never feel drained," he told me. "Knowing that my code directly helps people live more independent lives changes everything about how I approach problems." When researchers at the University of Pennsylvania studied workers doing tasks they found meaningless versus meaningful, they discovered something fascinating. The brain's reward pathways barely activated during meaningless work, while they lit up dramatically during purpose-driven activities. What's remarkable is that you can actually hack this system. Even routine tasks can be transformed when connected to a bigger purpose. Researchers at Harvard Business School found that when people were shown exactly how their data entry work helped others, supporting medical research, their productivity increased by 27% overnight. Nothing about the actual work changed, just their understanding of why it mattered. This effect is so powerful that some companies have restructured how they talk about work. At Patagonia, they make outdoor clothing while being in business to save our home planet. Employees report that connecting even mundane tasks to environmental protection transforms their experience. One employee said, "Filling out expense reports feels different when you know every dollar saved goes toward environmental causes." When you're engaged in purpose-driven work, your brain releases a cocktail of neurochemicals, dopamine, endorphins, and serotonin, that enhance cognitive performance. A neuroscience team at the University of California found that people working on personally meaningful tasks showed 23% higher cognitive performance and made 41% fewer errors than those working on identical tasks framed as meaningless exercises. This brings us to flow, that magical state where you're completely absorbed in what you are doing. Time seems to disappear and work feels effortless. Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi found that people are up to 5 times more productive in a flow state compared to normal working mode. And what consistently triggers flow states? Working on something genuinely meaningful. A management consultant described 2 projects she worked on back-to-back. The first was a standard cost-cutting assignment, technically challenging but ultimately just about improving profit margins. The second helped a hospital redesign its emergency department to reduce wait times. "I applied the same skills to both projects," she said, "but the hospital work energized me, while the cost-cutting drained me. I would finish 12-hour days at the hospital feeling excited about coming back tomorrow." Studies tracking employees across different sectors found that those reporting high meaning in their work were 1.7 times more likely to stay with their organizations, 1.4 times more engaged, and took 75% fewer sick days than those finding their work meaningless. This translates directly to measurable productivity. You might think, "My job is what it is, I can't just quit and follow my passion." The good news is you don't have to. Researchers at Yale found people can significantly increase their sense of purpose by consciously connecting their current work to personal values. They call this job crafting, actively reframing tasks to align with what matters to you. A study from the University of Michigan tracked knowledge workers over 6 months and found those who consciously connected daily tasks to personal values reported 34% higher job satisfaction and demonstrated 29% higher productivity than those who didn't make these connections. The researchers concluded that purpose is a productivity superpower. You can apply this to almost any job. If you value learning, approach routine tasks as opportunities to master skills. If you value connection, focus on how your work supports colleagues or serves customers. The key is finding an authentic link between what you're doing and what you care about. How can you measure success beyond hours worked? Research shows purpose-driven work increases productivity by 30%, while reducing burnout by 40%, regardless of hours worked. Your output isn't determined by time spent. It's determined by the quality of your engagement and how deeply you measure success by engagement instead of hours. everything changes about how you structure your day. What if you could gain back over 2 hours of productive time every day without working longer? Sounds too good to be true, but neuroscience shows your brain is literally designed for this kind of efficiency. The problem isn't that you're not working hard enough, it's that you've been following a productivity system designed for factories, not for your uniquely human brain. So let's put everything we've learned together into something practical you can actually use. I call it the Sustainable Productivity System, a framework that combines energy management, deep work practices, and purpose-driven motivation into one cohesive approach. Unlike conventional wisdom that says just push through or sleep when you're dead, this system recognizes that your cognitive resources are finite and renewable, but only if you give them the chance to replenish. Think about it. How many times have you forced yourself to sit at a desk for hours while your brain basically checked out? Energy management over time. Start by tracking your natural energy patterns for a week. When do you naturally feel most alert and focused? For most people, there's a peak in the morning, a dip after lunch, and sometimes a second smaller peak in the late afternoon. Schedule your most demanding cognitive work during your energy peaks. Reserve your energy dips for administrative tasks, emails, or meetings that don't require intense focus. This approach works with your brain's natural rhythm rather than against it. The key technique here is time boxing with your energy rhythm in mind. Block out your calendar in 90-minute focused sessions followed by genuine breaks. Your brain literally needs this downtime to consolidate learning and maintain peak performance. Consider energy banking as a practical approach. Just as you wouldn't drain your bank account to zero every day, maintain some energy reserves, especially at the end of your workday. This prevents the cumulative fatigue that leads to burnout over time. Creating environments for deep work. Your surroundings dramatically impact your ability to focus. Identify your focus triggers, environmental cues that signal to your brain it's time for concentrated work. Maybe it's a specific playlist, a particular desk setup, or a special candle you light during deep work. These consistent cues help your brain transition into focus mode faster. Then, eliminate potential interruptions before they happen. Create a distraction-free device, a laptop with no email, no social media apps, and website blockers installed. Some professionals keep a separate computer strictly for deep work. The environment isn't just physical, it's also temporal. Create time boundaries by communicating with colleagues about your focus periods. Many teams now adopt no meeting days or quiet hours where everyone can focus without interruption. Build your focus gradually with a focus funnel. Start with a 30-minute distraction-free session, then extend to 45 minutes, then 60, eventually reaching that optimal 90-minute deep work block. This builds your focus muscle gradually instead of shocking your distraction-trained brain. Purpose-driven work alignment. Connect even mundane tasks to meaningful outcomes that matter to you personally. Take your to-do list and add a why column. For each task, write how it connects to something you genuinely care about. That report you're dreading might provide information that helps your team make better decisions, supporting your value of helping others succeed. Another technique is value stacking, accomplishing multiple personal values in a single activity. If you value both learning and connecting with others, schedule a coffee chat with a colleague to discuss new industry developments. When your brain recognizes a task as meaningful rather than empty, busy work, it allocates more resources to it. You think more clearly and creatively when working on something that matters to you. Putting it all together. Here's what an ideal workday might look like using this system. Start your morning with a brief planning session, not by checking email. Identify your 1 to 3 most important tasks that align with your values and require deep focus. Schedule your first 90-minute deep work block during your morning energy peak. Create your distraction-free environment, set a timer, and focus exclusively on your most important task. Follow with a genuine 20-minute break away from screens. Use your midday energy dip for emails, meetings, and administrative tasks. This is a perfect time for collaboration since social interaction can help counter the natural energy dip. If you experience an afternoon energy uptick, schedule another deep work session. End your workday with a brief review and rough plan for tomorrow. Create a shutdown ritual that signals to your brain that work is complete, clearing your desk, writing tomorrow's to-do list, or even saying out loud, "Workday complete." How this system counters productivity myths. This approach directly counters the myths we've discussed. Instead of believing more hours equal more output, you're optimizing your energy. Rather than multitasking, you're creating conditions for deep focus. Instead of pushing through fatigue, you're strategically renewing your mental resources. Think of your productivity like a high-performance engine. Regular maintenance isn't optional, it's essential. Just as an engine needs proper fuel, oil changes, and cool-down periods, your brain requires energy management, distraction-free environments, and recovery time to perform at its best. I've seen people transform their work lives with just 3 key habits: time boxing, distraction blocking, and energy-based scheduling. These 3 practices alone can help you reclaim over 2 hours of productive time each day, not by working longer, but by working aligned with your brain's natural capabilities. Start with just one technique, maybe a morning deep work block or a shutdown ritual. Small changes consistently applied create dramatic results over time. Remember, the goal isn't flawless execution. It's creating a sustainable rhythm that serves both your productivity and well-being over the long term. Success stories. Working less, achieving more. Creating that sustainable rhythm sounds good in theory, but does anyone actually pull this off in our always-on world? I used to think these approaches were just for the privileged few or tech companies with fancy offices. But then I started collecting stories from real people and organizations who've made these principles work in wildly different circumstances. Their results made me completely rethink what's possible. Have you ever hit a wall creatively while working longer hours? Daniel, a graphic designer, faced exactly this problem. Working 60-plus hour weeks, he was burning through clients because he couldn't keep up with deadlines. I was that guy who'd proudly say, "I'll sleep when I'm dead," Daniel told me. But my work was suffering. My portfolios started looking generic. Client feedback was getting harsher. After missing a major deadline and losing his biggest client, Daniel knew something had to change. The transition wasn't easy. I felt guilty for not working past 6 p.m. I kept checking my phone during family dinner, he admitted. But after committing to strict time boundaries, working in 90-minute focused blocks with real breaks between, his creative output exploded. The designs I created in those focused periods were so much better than what I was producing during my 12-hour days, he explained. And clients started specifically requesting my work again. Daniel discovered the paradox at the heart of sustainable productivity. Less time, better results. Similarly, Jamie, a writer I interviewed, used to force herself to sit at her desk from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. daily. I'd stare at the screen half the time, feeling guilty that I wasn't producing more, she said. After switching to an energy-based system, working intensely in the morning when her creativity peaks, taking a real midday break, and handling admin tasks in her afternoon low period, she now completes projects in half the time. The crazy part is I'm making more money now, Jamie told me. My clients are happier with my work and I can take on more projects because I'm not exhausted all the time. Do you wonder if these principles work beyond individual freelancers? Sophia, a marketing director, implemented similar boundaries for her entire team. There was definitely pushback, she said. People thought we were going soft. But she insisted everyone track their actual productive hours versus hours at their desk. The data showed that despite shorter workdays, their campaign effectiveness metrics increased by 28%, and employee satisfaction jumped by 65%. By working with their natural energy cycles, Sophia's team achieved more while working less. Moving to larger organizational shifts, a software development firm in the UK switched to a 4-day workweek as a trial, planning to evaluate after 3 months. 2 years later, they haven't looked back. We expected a slight dip in productivity that would be offset by happier employees, their COO explained. What we didn't expect was that productivity would actually increase by 32%, customer satisfaction scores would rise, and employee burnout would practically disappear. Their approach wasn't simply cutting hours, They reimagined meetings, eliminated pointless tasks, and designed the work week around energy, not time. Have you considered how these principles might apply in high-stakes environments? When a regional healthcare provider noticed increasing burnout among their medical staff, they redesigned shifts around ultradian rhythms, created mandatory recovery periods, and eliminated non-essential documentation. Critical errors decreased by 41%, and patient satisfaction scores increased by 23%. The sustainable rhythm literally saved lives. I'm particularly inspired by a tech startup that made a seemingly small change, implementing mandatory rest periods. They installed hammocks and recliners in a quiet room and required developers to take 30-minute rest breaks after intense coding sessions. The team initially thought it was silly, but soon noticed something fascinating. The most innovative solutions consistently came right after these rest periods. I solved a bug in 5 minutes after a rest session that I'd been stuck on for 3 days, one developer reported. 6 months later, their product development cycle had shortened by 38%. These benefits extend beyond creativity. A manufacturing company that implemented energy-based schedules saw workplace accidents decrease by 63%, while quality control metrics improved by 17%. What makes these examples powerful is their consistency across different industries. From creative professionals to healthcare workers to production line employees, the pattern is clear. Working with your biology produces better results. I've noticed another interesting pattern when collecting these stories. The initial transition is almost always uncomfortable. People feel guilty and worry about falling behind. But after pushing through those first few weeks, nearly everyone reports they could never return to their old way of working. The financial impacts are significant too. Companies implementing these principles report average decreases of 32% in employee turnover. Considering the cost of replacing knowledge workers can range from 90% to 200% of their annual salary, the ROI is substantial. Perhaps most convincingly, these benefits sustain over time. This isn't a temporary productivity boost. It's a fundamental realignment with how humans actually perform at their best. As one CEO who implemented these principles company-wide reflected, "What surprises me most is that we didn't just see better work, we saw better people." Employees started showing up as their best selves, not their stressed, depleted versions. And that's ultimately what sustainable productivity creates, the space for us to bring our full, energized selves to our work and our lives. So here we are at the end of our journey together. Everything we've covered points to one clear truth. Success isn't about grinding yourself down to dust. It's about working harmoniously with your biology, not against it. Think about what resonates most with you: the power of deep focus, connecting work to deeper meaning, valuing creativity and well-being over output. Remember that your worth isn't measured by your productivity alone. Your humanity matters tremendously. Strategic rest is an essential component of sustainable success, not a sign of laziness. What one change will you embrace to work with your biology